What's up, everybody? It's your boy Ryan, and this is the Thunder Channel on Nootropics. Thanks so much for being with me. I'm going to talk about, from the perspective of a business person. Now, this could mean that you work for corporate, or this could mean you're an entrepreneur. More tailored toward entrepreneurs, and how you should go about situating nootropic stacks for what you want to do. In the meantime, guys, go support the broadcast at livecortex.com. If you haven't tried the Cortex stack, it's a no-brainer. It's cheap at just regular MSRP, but you can do auto ship on it, which gets you Cortex for cheaper. It's just a very powerful stack. I mean, no combination of ingredients besides uridine, CDP, choline, artichoke extract, and bacopa has the ability to induce verbal fluency the way that Cortex does. But also brain fluidity, energy, motivation. It's working on a multitude of neurotransmitter systems and receptor sites to make you function extremely optimal. Get Cortex, livecortex.com. Do auto ship if you are inclined to have Cortex for cheaper and shipped to you automatically without you having to do anything every month. If you're new to nootropics, I created a video course that lays out the groundwork, the framework, gives you many stacks, shows you the ropes, but also shows you advanced level strategies on using nootropics to get the best brain results. Get ground zero at livecortex.com. If you're a guy that has to race test, VTP, this is a tailored consult that ends you up with a tailored regimen on raising free and total test, the goal of which being tangibly raising free and total test on the lab work. And then, of course, remedying EQ issues, libido issues, whatever issues are related to your test deficiencies. Last couple things. If you are a young male, business person, or entrepreneur, middle-aged male or older male, business person or entrepreneur, and you either took Adderall for 5 years and was super productive, and now it's burnt you out, and you have diminishing returns, and you need to fix your brain, or you function pretty awesomely, but want to see what it's like to function at the Bradley Cooper limitless status, like uber productive, uber effective. Your brain is a massive instrument for productivity and cranking out work, high output stuff. That is what I do. Either work with me for 3.5 months or 6 months. The typical person that comes to me is either a big company executive that has 25 things to do in every 2 hours or over the course of a day, or an entrepreneur building a business, running a business, just people that have to have high levels of brain output. The goal being situate a bunch of very tailored formulations for those tasks. 3.5 months or 6 months. Do those consults at livecortex.com. For you PSSD folks, I also want to say that 2 slots just opened up for the next 6 months. And there are people in the pipeline, so if you're thinking about doing it, you have to pull the trigger ASAP. Okay. So you're a business person, right? Again, either corporate or an entrepreneur. This is how you should think about using nootropics. I think first, to use nootropics the correct way, you sort of have to do other things that are unrelated to nootropics, and one of them is defining your goals. Defining your productivity goals. So, you're the CFO, the CEO, the COO, the CMO of a company. And you're looking at your benchmarks for productivity, where they are, your references, where are they now? And you identify that there are things that need to be improved because you have a particular goal in mind. There's this initiative, and within the next 6 months, you've got to achieve it. Or it's an initiative that you create. You have to specifically and clearly define how many more hours of productivity you need in the day. And what, you may not know exactly the tasks that you're going to have to do, but, how much more productivity do you need? And what is the outcome? If you're an entrepreneur and, you've built this, or you're wanting to build let's call it, you built a funnel system. You're a marketer or something. You built a funnel system that you want to, sell to other entrepreneurs. And so what are your goals? Define the goals. Expanding the reach of your funnel system to 2,000 people in 90 days. right? This is as specific as you have to get. You've got to get very, very specific. And hopefully this is helpful for people outside of the realm of nootropics, just about thinking about goals. The more specific you are, the more you have a target to hit, the more you can actually construct ideas to do it. Because if you're shooting blind, you will not be able to formulate a strategy to hit your targets. That is for damn sure. So defining targets, step number one. After you define your targets, right, you sort of have to think about, in the period of open free time, of work time that you have throughout the day, an estimate of how many man hours per task. You would have to, of course, take these larger goals and then break them down into smaller tasks. Would you need to complete such tasks at your baseline? And then ideally, using nootropics, what you're wanting to do is shorten that time frame. That's something we don't really talk about often, but one of the goals is shortening the time frame it takes you to complete certain things, because your brain is working more efficiently using the right nootropic stacks that are tailored to you. So identifying the time frames. On the stack formulation and adjustment, and then setting up things like an ERS, an effective rotation schedule of nootropic stacks. This is where you really have to pay attention, and it really gets important. Because if you haven't read up on literature with proven methodologies on how to formulate nootropic stacks and then adjust them to perfection, and then cycle them appropriately between different nootropic stacks that you've figured out, well, then you'll have inconsistencies. You may not even be able to actually formulate stacks. You'll sort of have these fleeting, inconsistent stacks that one day made you feel really, really stimulatory, and you were like, whoa, man, I got a whole lot done. And then the next day you're like, it didn't really work the same. I mean, a lot of people experience that because they haven't really read into the literature or worked with a professional on the neuroscience side of nootropics as it relates to productivity. So there are principles, right, in formulating nootropic stacks. I saw a woman post on a forum recently. Yeah, I just got modafinil. Which dose should I start with, 100 milligrams or 200 milligrams? And right away, I went in the comment section and said, you probably should read a little bit more about what you're doing before you start that. That would be my suggestion. Because taking something like modafinil, where the highest tolerable dose for most people is 200 or 250 milligrams, you certainly won't want to start anywhere near that. Anywhere near it. Especially if you haven't taken it before, right? You would want to start extremely low. 50 milligrams. See how you fare. See what you can get done. See what kind of tangible results you get. Measure that. Then ask the question, well, can I now dose it higher, and will that expand the window of productivity and the amount of tasks that I was able to get done? Will that expand that? Well, probably. Ultimately leading toward your highest tolerable dose. You don't want to go above that. That would be the dose that gives you side effects, the dose that, in the case of modafinil, disrupts your sleep. Nootropics methodology, right? Starting low, working your way up. So that's part of stack formulation. Starting low, working your way up with everything in the stack. But also this notion of a base and synergistic additional components, okay? These are things you have to understand and come to learn. And we lay a lot of this out in some of this free content on YouTube, but also in Nootropics Ground Zero and the Nootropics Masterclass at livecortex.com. Usually putting a stack together, you want to have one heavy hitter that is doing a predominantly functional thing. And that depends on what it is you want to sit down and be doing, right? As an example, if your mission is to, your productivity task is to sit down and be processing centered, have it be easy to compartmentalize the tasks that you have to do. You need sectors of your brain that can hold information and keep it there while you're moving on to other sectors, and then you're switching back to said sectors. A good general example is just sort of general admin laptop work that you might have to do. Operations is a great example of that, if it is done mostly from a computer. Yeah, interaction with other people, sales, verbal fluency. You've got to identify what it is you need to do and then make one compound the primary heavy hitter. In the example of doing central processing work on a computer, you would want to use a racetam, right? You'd want to use something that's going to affect acetylcholine. I mean, that's just the bottom line. That's your base. You have a base now. Let's just call it aniracetam because you're forcing hippocampal cholinergic release. You're inducing better working memory. It's a great compound for that type of stuff. So you take your aniracetam at 700 milligrams, okay? Cofactors. Have you identified if you need a choline source? Probably if you're at this level, okay, so you have your choline source in there. But then it comes down to synergistic additional components, which will not be dosed in the same dose quantity. It won't even look remotely similar in terms of the dose range on it compared to aniracetam. You've got 700 of aniracetam. That's kind of a high dose or a normal regular dose. It's not low. It's not an OP overpowered dose, but it's in the high range. So if you're going to bring in something synergistic with that, like adding energy, because aniracetam will give you a degree of energy. So let's just say you bring in dynamine, which will add extra energy to that situation. You would not want to dose it at 200 milligrams because that's kind of the high dose for dynamine, right? You would want to dose it lower. All you're doing is you're adding a little bit onto that base. That's all you're doing with, in this case, the third component of your stack. You have the racetam, the choline source. Then you're building synergistic additional components on top of it. You don't want to dose that third thing high. People usually look at that and go, "Oh, let's just go as high as we can, and let's just like blow our brain up." Not a good option. Not a good option. You are looking for performance and flow. You are not looking to be high on cocaine, okay, or feel like you are, and you definitely don't want to do that. Looking at what all those chemicals do and then understanding who you are and how you respond to certain things. Okay, do you have a degree of anxiety generally all the time, or maybe in response to stimulants? We have some pretty stimulating things in that stack: aniracetam, choline source, dynamine. Would you want to balance that out just a little bit? Again, there's way too much to talk about for me to cover in this video, but if you're using proper nootropics methodology and you've identified that may be somewhat stimulating, as a trial, if you're formulating this stack, you'd probably want to bring in a balancer like phosphorracetam or theanine. Let's just call it theanine because this tends to work really well with the rest of these chemicals. In the balancer's sake, in the state of having a balancer, you would want to not dose it substantially high, but not uber low. You wouldn't want to dose theanine in this case at 50 milligrams. You'd probably want to bring 100 milligrams. Not that much higher, but higher than 50 milligrams. You want to have 100 milligrams of theanine in that stack. Now, this is just your first go. You may have to adjust that 100 to 200. You may identify that you can take the dynamine up to 100, and that the theanine might actually have to be 50, and it gives you the perfect balance. But again, this is just where you want to start. And then, that's your formulation, right? So you have 700 milligrams aniracetam, your choline source, you've got 50 milligrams dynamine, 100 milligrams of L-theanine. You take the stack, you execute the defined work, and then you see how it goes. When I work with clients, I have them fill out a results section in each stack, and that tells me a lot of what I need to know about that stack. I know what time of day they took it. I know what they were trying to do, productivity-wise. I know how effective the stack was in doing that. And I also know how, if the stack caused any problem whatsoever. And by writing your results down, then you know how to adjust it, right? So in this particular case, if that stack made a person unable to focus, there's a couple things you could do. You could either lower the aniracetam, because that has the ability to make you really good at multitasking, not good at focusing. Or you could increase the theanine, in this case, to 200, 250 milligrams, which may slow things down just enough where you can keep that aniracetam dose in, and it won't leave you sort of all over the place. Results. Very, very important. So, what I just did about adding more theanine is just an adjustment. You want to look, as you see where this is going, you want to look at it from the perspective of formulation of having a base, having synergistic additional components, identifying the tasks that you're wanting to use the stack for, executing the task, looking at the results, and then making an adjustment. This process is the process to using nootropics in a way that, first of all, makes you perform really well, makes you understand which dose formulations work really well for certain things, but also gives you a consistency of stacks. If you do this 30 times with 30 different sets of compounds, then holy shit, you can induce certain states on cue. You can induce states on cue. For me, I know a perfect many stacks for doing videos. Cortex stack alone is one of them, right? Because I formulated that. That's 4 chemicals in one stack. I formulated that stack. But there are many other stacks that are really, really great for videos for me. Imagine having a bunch of those and then being able to do certain states on cue to be productive in defined goals and tasks that you have in corporate or as an entrepreneur. That is the basis of what you should be doing as a business person as it relates to nootropics. I can tell you if you want to sort of get some performance but largely stay stagnant in your growth, don't do any of that. But there is a way to use nootropics that is, can seem painstaking and sometimes actually annoying to people. But when they get it and feel how it feels to apply this methodology like this, I would never go back. I literally feel awesome when I want to feel awesome. That if you're doing it this way, it is absolutely the best way to do it. So say you go through all that and then you develop 35 nootropic stacks. And some of them are intertwined with regular supplements, like NAC or something, which we wouldn't really consider a classical nootropic, or quercetin, let's just say. You are now armed with the capacity to decide. This gives you a great degree of control over your life, over your productive life. You're armed with the capacity to then decide to get certain things done that will move the ball forward in your business or at work. Because you now have a stack or many stacks to induce the state you need to do that. Imagine being in control of your productivity. That's the whole point of it. Okay? So I hope I've given you some nootropics methodology. Again, there's so much in what I've created in terms of nootropics methodology that I couldn't spill it out in one video. But that was just laying the groundwork for people to get a better understanding of what they should be doing. If you take what I've said, you're already light years ahead of potentially where you are now and light years ahead of other business people getting into nootropics, okay? So thanks so much for watching. What we talked about and some of my processes I've developed over the course of the last 15 years, they are the basis for what I'm doing with clients on the 3.5-month and the 6-month intensive nootropics programs. I mean, these are one-on-one biohacking nootropics consults that are tailored specifically for this. I mean, we work with people who have Adderall burnout too, on a restorative capacity. And the restoration consults are fun, and I love to do them because I can help people. But at the same time, I also love doing just the full-on nootropic roster performance ones, where we engage in this process and we identify various stacks that are super, super micro-tailored to what it is that you need to be doing in life. And when you're that specific with how your brain performs as it relates to things that you need to be executing, the amount you can get done should be illegal. It is insane. It's how I built this business. It's how I do everything in my life. Nootropics are, besides the other things you have to do to create motivation, sleep well, eat well, Nootropics are a big part of my performance, and I just would never go back. You know, there is a degree of productivity, a degree of functionality that you have your functionality now, and then there's this other degree of functionality. When you get there, you'll never want to go back. And when you get there, you also wonder, why the hell isn't everybody doing this, right? Shh. It's because not everybody knows about nootropics. Work with me 3.5 months or 6 months. Do that at livecortex.com. Thank you so much for being with me, everybody. Talk to you next time.